The year is 1998. The Chicago Bulls just beat the Utah Jazz for the second year in a row for the NBA championship. And we watch as Michael Jordan rides off into NBA mythology for the second time. I think if we had to frame one of the greatest periods in NBA history, this might be it. In fact, 1996 through 2006, in my opinion, is the greatest period for the NBA. At the same time, it ended up being the downfall of the NBA. Let's talk about it. From 1996 to 2006, the NBA saw some of the best winning in sports history. I want to start by taking a brief look at the champs that make up the decade. There will be parts where you might want me to expand, but at the risk of a 40-minute video, I will keep it brief where I can. Starting in 1996, 97, and 98, we saw Jordan's Chicago Bulls complete their second three-peat of the 90s. In fact, Jordan marked the end of a triple curse placed on NBA players. The Magic, Bird, and Jordan curse plagued the league for about 20 years, and they crushed so many dreams in the 80s and 90s. We still hear the stories of Hall of Famers talking about their legendary battles against the trio and how they stopped most greats from tasting victory. Not alone in his run, Jordan tasked Pippen with being his right-hand man. And to this day, a right hand has never been better at performing his duties. Jordan said it best. When people speak Michael Jordan, they should speak Scottie Pippen. Pip was everything you wanted in a Robin. Although at times, we saw how frustrated he would get and even thought he could win without Jordan. He didn't, but we still love you for trying, Pip, because he never got in Jordan's way of winning. And that statement will be important later. The following year, in 1999, enter Gregg Popovich, possibly the greatest coach of all time, along with his greatest protege, five-time champ Tim Duncan.
Duncan giving room. That's a leg is open for him. That's illegal. For a guy to step out like that and shoot that ball off the glass.
They win their first ring in 1999 and went on to win 3 more in this beautiful era of basketball. In total, Popovich and Duncan will go on to win 5 championships together, but today, we'll just speak on the 3 that fall in this period. In 2000, 2001, and 2002, the Lakers would give birth to Shaquille O'Neal, Diesel, the Big Aristotle, Superman, the most dominant player in NBA history, and arguably the GOAT. Fight me in the comment section. But Shaq didn't do it alone. He had a young man by the name of Kobe Bryant. The 5-time champ, 2-time scoring champ, 1-time MVP, slam dunk, you get the point. They went on a 3-peat just when we thought the dominance of Jordan would never be seen again. Following that incredible 3-peat in 2003, the Spurs won their second championship in 5 years. Tim Duncan was fully cooking now, and there was no doubt he was going to become the greatest power forward to ever play the game. And now he had the running mates in Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili to help him win. Alongside them were great role players in Steven Jackson, Steve Kerr, and Bruce Bowen. The next year, in 2004, while they were not called the Bad Boys, we saw one of the most balanced teams in the Detroit Pistons. They snuck in the back door and cleaned out the whole league. This team was scrappy and organized at the same time. They fought tooth and nail for their spot at the top of the pylon. It was instantly a fan favorite, not only because Detroit was a city that was struggling, but because that Detroit team felt like basketball. No egos that put an individual before the team. Chauncey Big Shot Billups ran the point and made sure they ran their sets. He allowed his shooting guard Rip Hamilton to abuse people in the mid-range. Ben and Rasheed Wallace, no relation, defended the front court with dominance every night. Sheed spreading the floor and scoring from every spot. Big Ben muscling every big and could guard 1 through 5 when needed. As a testament to their greatness, these four would all go on to make the All-Star game in 2006. Next year, in 2005, the Spurs won yet again, the third time for this glorious decade, securing Duncan's third ring and third Finals MVP. In 2006, the piece de resistance. The 2006 Miami Heat's Wade and Shaq run. Shaq was out of his prime, but still a force, averaging 20 points, 9 rebounds, and nearly 2 blocks a game. He decided to team up with D. Wade, aka Flash, aka Mr. Fourth Quarter. This is the year I realized that basketball can be poetry in motion. That 2006 run cemented my love of the game forever, and I finally understood people who witnessed that Jordan run live. Growing up, I didn't play or watch basketball much. I saw a couple of games in Jordan's final championship run, but that was about it for me. Once I bought into basketball, I went back to see what the hype was all about. So for the most part, I have only seen replays of an outcome I already knew was coming. But in 2006, to have seen that level of greatness, not knowing what was coming next, the beauty of basketball had become my reality, and I loved every minute of it.
Won't go. Rebound Wade. The Miami Heat, they've done it. They win their first championship in franchise history.
Now, we can talk about winners all day, but to be honest, none of these years of winning mean much if they beat up on sorry teams. And boy, is that not the case. Starting in '96, Jordan had to knock off the Seattle Supersonics. They had Gary the Glove Payton and Sean "He's jumped out of the building" Kemp, toss in Nate McMillan, Eric Snow, Sam Perkins, and you just have a team brimming with talent. In '97 and '98, to round out the Bulls three-peat, Jordan took on the Jerry Salone Utah Jazz. You know, Karl the Mailman Malone and John Stockton, the all-time assist leader by like thousands of assists. Literally, Stockton sits at 15,806 assists over 1,504 games. And among active players, 38-year-old Chris Paul is first up to catch him with 11,731. Paul's career average is 9.2 assists per game. Let's say he can keep it up at his age.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Pause. He would have to play 443 more games, which is 5.4 full NBA seasons, averaging 9.2 assists per game. LeBron is second among active players and would need 694 games. This means even if Paul or LeBron caught him, They play way more than 1,504 games to do it. So Stockton is the best assist man, period. No one better, and Jordan spat on his dreams, cementing that Jazz team as one of the last great teams to suffer the Jordan Bird Magic dominance that ran the 80s and 90s. In 1999, the Spurs defeated the last great Knicks team. The end of an era in Knicks basketball going to the finals. For perspective, it's 25 years later, and the Knicks look like they need another 25 before they make it back to the finals. That's how good the Patrick Ewing Knicks were. In 2000, Shaq's Lakers crushed the Pacers and Reggie Miller, who is the third best shooter of all time, and considered the first best at the time of his defeat. Miller, now a commentator, is both loved and hated by fans for his cocky bravado. But when you retire as the best shooter to lead a franchise, I mean, until Steph Curry, he really had no rival. In 2001, Shaq's Lakers tossed aside the 76ers and Allen Iverson, who was the 2001 MVP, and at that time, the best ball handler, and went on to become a 4-time scoring champ. His biggest influence came off the court as the greatest trendsetter in league history, from the AI crossover, to the AI braids, to the tattoos and baggy jeans and gaudy jewelry. He even entertained us in press conferences with the most iconic line in sports history.
We're talking about practice, man. We're talking about practice. We're talking about practice. We ain't talking about the game. We're talking about practice, man.
In 2002, the Shaq and Kobe, or Kobe and Shaq Lakers, straight dog walked the New Jersey Nets. Which is crazy because the Nets really were great. They had arguably one of the top 10 point guards in history in Jason Kidd, averaging 15, 10, and 7, along with the number 1 pick in Kenyon Martin, who was jumping out of the gym on guys and guarding 1 through 5. Next year, in 2003, the Spurs beat the New Jersey Nets. I mean, if you thought the Nets were soft for being swept in the previous year, I will argue this. No team went to the NBA Finals 2 times in a row back then by chance. You had to earn it in both conferences. Although, I can admit, the East was a bit soft. How soft is up for debate, considering the 2004 season. In 2004, the Pistons from the East defeated Kobe and Shaq's Lakers 4-1. The Lakers were great, but just weren't the same with Shaq's prime fading. For perspective, for the last year of the Lakers three-peat, Shaq averaged 27 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game. For this loss to the Pistons, he averaged 21 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks. In no way did Shaq fall off a cliff, but that point differential showed the Lakers were about to experience some growing pains. Mostly because Kobe wanted to be the man, without question, and there can only be one Batman, which led to Shaq leaving after this, and it kind of was what it was for the Lakers. In the following year, 2005, the Westward returned with the Spurs defeating all-time great coach Larry Brown and his Pistons, once again dominating the East. But the series went 7 games, and boy, was it beautiful. Tim the Big Fundamental Duncan versus 4-time Defensive Player of the Year Big Ben Wallace was amazing. Tony Parker going at Big Shot Billups, Rip Hamilton versus Mono on the scoreboard was brilliant. I'm not sure if I've ever seen 2 teams in the finals that were more balanced or better coached on both sides. And in 2006, Wade and Shaq's Miami Heat beat the Dallas Mavericks in 6. As amazing as it was to watch Wade take over, I had to admit years later that the thrill of it was from the Maverick side. Prime Dirk Nowitzki was my least favorite player, but hate him or love him, the man was a 7-foot phenom. The man easily had a top 5 most beautiful jump shots to watch. The 1-foot fade is worthy of Basketball Hall of Fame, and the man who gave it to the world deserved his induction ceremony this year. Not alone, Dirk also had Jason the Jet Terry knocking down shots from everywhere whenever his number was called. They also had a young Devin Harris at the point, and he was damaged in the open court. Rounding them out was Josh Howard, one of the best two-ways of his era. His nights were spent guarding the best of the best, and he held his own versus LeBron, Melo, Kobe, Wade, and Paul Pierce. Howard was a Swiss Army knife, and following that year, he appeared in the All-Star game. I know nostalgia can sometimes be a high for us as basketball lovers, but man, did that rant bring me back to the good old days. There's a beautiful quote from the TV show The Office.
I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them.
And this is how I feel about the NBA. At the time I began to fall in love with the NBA, I never considered that would be the height of my feelings toward the sport. But several things have soured my taste for today's NBA. Perhaps a video for another day. Today, I want to focus on why that decade from 1996 to 2006 really was the best. Every year during that period, there was something beautiful to behold during the finals. It felt like the best teams from each conference made it to the finals, and there was no got lucky. There is a reason why Jordan, Shaq, and Duncan dominated this period. Jordan and Duncan winning 3 chips, Shaq winning 4. Each of them in their own right can make a case that they are the GOAT. Again, feel free to argue me in the comments, but consider for a moment that there is not a real definition for the GOAT debate. Everyone judges off of their own standards. I personally think there are GOATs at each position, and in this way, none of these players clash in my mind. Jordan is the best shooting guard, Duncan is the best power forward, and Shaq is the best center. But that's only a piece of what made this period of basketball so fun to watch. All of these guys, as good as they were, never played selfish basketball. The reason I think they won as superstars is the same reason the 2004 Pistons snuck in and took a year out of this period: team basketball. Nowadays, we look at Golden State or Denver like an anomaly, and I'm not blaming players for doing what teams have allowed, I'm blaming the league. By embracing selfish players, the league has opened up Pandora's box. Every superstar, which they say every team has now, also has a Robin. And these Robins conduct themselves like they're Batman. This is a big reason why we see big name guys jump from team to team so much these days. No player thinks they can play second fiddle for long, and so they don't. Teams placate them for the sake of selling tickets. Fans eat it up while basketball enthusiasts like myself sit back and go, huh. That's how this year's Damian Lillard trade felt. And as the number 1 team in the East last year, and now the number 2 team in the conference this year, they just fired their head coach, Adrian Griffin, for one of the worst coaches in the NBA, Doc Rivers. So they realize something isn't right, but instead of fixing it, they make another mistake? My point is that teams cleave to ticket and merchandise sales instead of putting together winning teams because they just want the guaranteed money. This leaves fans with a poorer product. I'm tired of seeing Dame and Giannis run into each other on the court or just fail at pick and roll. Frankly, it's embarrassing. They are good enough to win regular season games, but this is no championship team. The league used to understand this, but now the money and narrative is all that matters. I miss rule changes that made sense. Like what, you ask? Well, in 1936, the league introduced the 3 seconds rule. The idea was to stop players like Wilt Chamberlain from sitting in the lane and scoring 100 points. I love Wilt to death, but we can all agree scoring 100 points means something is wrong. I think this was related to the lack of talent in the league, along with rules that just needed to update to keep pace with the talent evolution. In 1999, the 5-second back to the basket rule was introduced to stop players like Charles Barkley from eating clock and bullying players by backing them down from half court. This was a small tweak, but added fairness to the defensive side of the ball without compromising exciting scoring. Now, these rule changes were great and made the league more competitive. However, in 2004, the league decided to tank the entire progression. They eliminated hand checking.
LeBron James is the best player in the world. Freeze it. There's no defensive pressure or touching because of the new rules in the current state. So here's a guy who can play probably forever in this type of environment. That is the difference between the era. They always ask me, what would Shaq have done in this era? Or Charles. I said, Charles would have probably scored 1,000,000 points. And I was like, Shaq would have maybe 1,000,000,000.
How about you?
8,000,000.
This was devastating to the league, and some people say it really kicked in during that 06 Miami run. Now, when I rewatched the series, I can't really say that rule took the chip from the Mavs because both Wade and Dirk shot 10 free throws a game, which felt like too many for me, but that's superstar balance. What I did see in the years following is how it began to change regular season and playoff games. The refs had more control on getting stars in foul trouble and dictating the flow of the game easier. We wonder why guys are scoring 60 and 70 today like it's nothing. Well, look no further. In summation, I miss rule changes that made sense because they make the league better. I know there is so much I left out, like how injuries now plague the league and salary cap changes, etc. But the goal isn't to dissect history today. It was to pay homage to a great era from 96 to 06 and give you an idea of what made the winners and losers of the era great and how poor rule changes and policy took us out of that era. Because the players and coaches really haven't changed. It's how the game is officiated and the league is managed today that has changed. There was a time when guys went to war on that hardwood, and that's what we as basketball lovers miss. Let them keep the politics and narratives and big sums of money. Respectfully, we would like the sport back, the dribbling, the passing, the post-ups, the dunking, and the love the players have for each other, the fans, and most importantly, the game. Well, that's all for me. Mr. B, signing out. Peace.